The Mafia boss went pale when the little girl whispered, "I think you're my daddy." He'd killed men for less, but this time his hands just shook. Across the ballroom, her mother stood frozen, until a red dot appeared on the glass beside her head. The scent of overpriced perfume and champagne clung to my borrowed evening gown as I stood near the bar, my fingers wrapped too tightly around a glass of sparkling water. 5 years of working at Riverside Animal Clinic had taught me to recognize the difference between a routine night and one that would shatter everything I'd built. This was supposed to be routine. My daughter Lily stood beside me moments ago, her small hand tucked in mine, her velvet dress slightly too big at the shoulders. At 5 years old, she'd learned to be patient during my long clinic hours, understanding in ways that twisted guilt through my chest. She deserved better than a mother who'd fled her past, who'd raised her alone with nothing but half-truths and carefully avoided questions. "Stay close, sweetheart," I'd whispered, scanning the glittering ballroom for familiar faces from the animal rescue board. My colleague, Sarah Collins, had convinced me to attend. Her encouraging smile and promise that it'll be good for the clinic's reputation still echoed in my mind. The sound of a child's laughter made me turn. My heart stopped. Lily was gone. I pushed through the crowd, my heels clicking against marble floors, my breath catching with each passing second. Then I saw her, standing on tiptoe near the center of the ballroom, tugging at the sleeve of a man in a black suit. A man surrounded by space no one else dared enter. A man whose presence commanded both fear and absolute attention. I was already moving toward them before I could think. But I was too far away, and Lily was already leaning close to whisper something in his ear. I watched Nathan Cross go completely still. The color drained from his face. His hand, halfway to pushing her gently aside, froze in midair. He stared down at my daughter, at her dark curls that caught the chandelier light, at her eyes that reflected a face he'd known 5 years ago. And something cracked behind his carefully controlled expression. No, not here, not now. "Lily!" My voice came out sharper than I intended. She turned, smiling, oblivious. "Mommy, I found him! From the picture!" The world tilted. Conversations around us stuttered to silence. Heads turned. Camera phones lifted. Nathan's gaze snapped to mine across the marble expanse, and I watched recognition hit him like a bullet. His jaw tightened. His bodyguard, a massive man with watchful eyes, stepped closer, murmuring something urgent into his ear. I reached Lily and pulled her against my side, my heart hammering so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "We need to go." "Ms. Carter." Nathan's voice was low, controlled, but I heard the tremor beneath it. The same voice that once whispered my name in the dark. The voice that disappeared without explanation, without goodbye. "I think we need to talk." "You already did," I said, the words bitter on my tongue. "When you left." His hand moved toward me, an instinct maybe, or a plea, but stopped when he registered the fear in my eyes. Not fear of him, fear of this, of exposure. Of the carefully built walls around my life crumbling in front of 500 strangers. "Not here," he said quietly. "Please." Lily looked between us, confusion clouding her small face. "Mommy, why are you scared?" Because I recognized the weight of the stairs around us, the dangerous curiosity in eyes that didn't belong to charity donors or animal lovers. Because somewhere in this crowd, someone was watching with more than idle interest. I bent down, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "We just need to go, baby. You can bring your cake." As I straightened, I caught sight of a man on the upper balcony. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Nathan, and the smile on his face made ice crawl up my spine. Nathan followed my gaze, and his expression went from shock to something darker, harder. "Olivia." He stepped closer. his voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. You need to let me get you somewhere safe. Right now. Safe from what? But I already knew. I'd always known that running from Nathan Cross meant running from a world where men like him made enemies who didn't forgive. His next words confirmed it. From anyone who just realized, I have something to lose. The ballroom erupted in whispers as we moved toward the exit together, Lily between us, her small hand in mine, and her curious eyes on the man she'd just called Daddy. I didn't look back at the glittering crowd or the man on the balcony. I was too busy calculating how many minutes it would take to pack our lives into a suitcase. The night air hit us as we stepped outside, cold and sharp. Nathan's SUV pulled up immediately, as if he'd already sent the signal. His bodyguard opened the door, his expression grim. This wasn't how I wanted you to find out, Nathan said quietly, his hand hovering near my back but not quite touching. Any of it. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the same man who'd once held me like I was the only thing keeping him human. But I also saw the truth I'd ignored 5 years ago. The danger that followed him like a shadow. The life he'd tried to protect me from by vanishing. You don't get to decide what I need to know anymore, I said. Not about you. Not about... I glanced down at Lily, who was watching us with wide, worried eyes. Not about anything. He nodded slowly, accepting the boundary I'd drawn. Then let me show you. Let me explain everything. His voice dropped lower. And let me keep you both alive long enough to hate me properly. I wanted to refuse. To take Lily's hand and walk away, back to our small apartment above the clinic, back to our quiet, safe life. But the man on the balcony's smile flickered through my memory. And I knew, with the same instinct that told me which animals were beyond saving, that our quiet life had just ended. I climbed into the SUV. Lily scrambled in beside me, and Nathan slid in last, closing the door on the glittering gala and the whispers that would follow us for days. As the car pulled away, I caught my reflection in the tinted window. The same woman who'd learned to deliver puppies in the middle of the night, who'd raised a daughter alone, who'd rebuilt herself from nothing. But somewhere beneath that reflection, I could still see the girl who'd loved a man named Ethan Cole, before I learned his real name was Nathan Cross. And love wasn't enough to outrun bullets. The SUV's leather seats smelled like expensive cigars and gun oil. Lily's head drooped against my shoulder within minutes, lulled by the hum of the engine and the exhaustion of a 5-year-old who'd just upended her mother's entire world without meaning to. I stroked her curls absently, feeling Nathan's gaze on us from across the seat. Don't, I whispered, my voice low enough not to wake her. Don't look at her like that. Like what? Like you have a right to. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The man driving, Marcus, Nathan had called him, glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes sharp and assessing. We're being followed, Marcus said quietly. Black sedan, 2 cars back. Nathan's entire posture shifted. Gone was the man frozen in shock at the gala. This was someone else. Someone harder. Lose them. The SUV accelerated smoothly, weaving through traffic with practiced precision. I pulled Lily closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Marcus took 3 rapid turns, doubling back through side streets until the headlights behind us disappeared into the city's maze. Clear, Marcus finally said. Nathan's shoulders relaxed fractionally, but his expression remained granite. Take us to her place. We need to get her things. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. You're not deciding where we go. He turned to me, and in the dim light from passing street lamps, I saw something flicker across his face. Regret, maybe, or exhaustion. Olivia, please. Just let me. Let you what? Sweep in and take over? You lost that privilege 5 years ago. The rest of the drive passed in suffocating silence. When Marcus pulled up to the small building above Riverside Animal Clinic, the familiar sight of peeling paint and the flickering security light felt like a lifeline. This was my world, modest, safe, mine. Nathan didn't belong here. I shifted Lily's weight in my arms as I climbed out. She stirred but didn't wake, her small body warm and trusting against my chest. Nathan moved to follow, but I stopped him with a look. You wait here. Olivia. I said wait. Marcus caught Nathan's arm when he tried to protest. Let her go. I'll keep watch. I didn't wait for Nathan's response. I carried Lily up the narrow staircase to our second-floor apartment, fumbling with my keys one-handed. Inside, everything looked exactly as we'd left it 4 hours ago. The breakfast dishes still in the sink, Lily's art project spread across the kitchen table, the life we'd built together untouched by the chaos we'd just escaped. I laid Lily in her bed, pulling the blanket decorated with cartoon puppies up to her chin. She mumbled something about cake and daddies, her face peaceful in sleep. My chest constricted. What have I done? What have I brought into her life? I was pulling out an overnight bag from the closet when the knock came. Firm, insistent, impossible to ignore. Through the peephole, Nathan stood rain-soaked despite the cloudless night, as if he'd been pacing in the parking lot, working up the courage to climb these stairs. His hair was disheveled, his bow tie loose around his neck. He looked nothing like the controlled, dangerous man from the ballroom. He looked like Ethan. I opened the door but blocked the entrance with my body. I told you to wait. You owe me 5 minutes. His voice was rough, pleading. Please. Against every instinct screaming at me to slam the door, I stepped aside. He entered slowly, taking in the small space. The worn couch Sarah had helped me haul up 3 flights of stairs, the veterinary textbooks stacked on every surface, the photographs covering one entire wall. His gaze lingered on a picture of Lily as a newborn, tiny and wrinkled in my arms. You did this alone, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. You weren't here. I didn't know. He stopped, his hands curling into fists at his sides. God, Olivia, I didn't know. You didn't ask. The words tasted like acid. You didn't call. You didn't leave a note. You just disappeared, Ethan. Or should I say Nathan? Who else are you that I don't know about? He flinched. I was protecting you. From what? The truth? From me. He took a step closer, and I saw the desperation cracking through his composure. From what I am. What I do. If they'd known about you. If anyone in my world had known. So you decided for me. You decided I was better off alone, and pregnant, and terrified. My voice broke despite my effort to keep it steady. Do you have any idea what that year was like? Wondering if you were dead? If I'd imagined everything between us? I thought about you every day. That doesn't count for anything. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 5 years of unanswered questions. Then Nathan asked the one question I'd been dreading since Lily tugged on his sleeve. Is she mine? I wanted to lie, to protect Lily from this world he represented. But looking at him, at the hope and fear warring in his expression, I couldn't. Yes. The word hung in the air like a confession. Nathan's breath left him in a rush, and he sank onto the arm of my couch as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. 5 years, he whispered. I've had a daughter for 5 years, and I didn't know. You would have if you'd stayed. If I'd stayed, you'd both be dead. He looked up at me, and the raw honesty in his eyes made my anger falter. The night I left, 3 of my men were killed in an ambush. Someone betrayed me, leaked my location to a rival organization. They were targeting anyone I cared about. If I'd stayed, headlights flashed through the window, cutting him off. A car idled across the street, its engine running, its windows tinted black. Nathan was on his feet instantly, his entire body taut with alertness. He moved to the window, staying to the side as he peered through the curtain. How long has that car been there? I don't know. Maybe it's just... You're being watched. His voice had gone cold, professional. The warmth from moments ago evaporated. Pack a bag. Now. You don't get to order me around anymore. He turned to me, and the fear in his expression froze my protest in my throat. Olivia, please. I know you hate me. I know you want me gone. But whoever's in that car isn't here for me. They're here for you. And for her. As if to punctuate his words, the night exploded with the sharp crack of breaking glass. Lily's window. I was moving before conscious thought caught up, racing down the hallway toward her room. Nathan was faster, his arm catching me around the waist and pulling me back as another shot punched through the wall where my head had been seconds before. Stay down! He shoved me toward the floor, already moving toward Lily's room in a crouch. I crawled after him, my heart in my throat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely propel myself forward. Through the doorway, I could see Lily sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and confused, too shocked to even cry. Nathan reached her first, scooping her into his arms and shielding her body with his. It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to play a game, all right? We're going to be very quiet and very quick. He was backing toward the hallway, toward me, when I heard Marcus's voice shouting from outside, gunfire responding in sharp bursts. Nathan's eyes met mine in the darkness. Do you trust me? I wanted to say no, to scream that this was exactly why he should have stayed gone. But Lily was shaking in his arms, and the sound of sirens was still too far away. Get her out of here, I whispered. He nodded once, then handed me Lily as he pulled a gun from somewhere beneath his jacket. Back door. Marcus will cover us. Don't stop running until you're in the SUV. I clutched my daughter against my chest, feeling her tears soak into my ruined gown, and followed Nathan Cross, the man I'd loved, lost, and now needed to survive the night, into the darkness of my hallway. 5 years of running from the past had just ended, and the war I'd tried to avoid had finally found us. The gates opened like jaws, swallowing us into a different world. Nathan's estate sprawled across what looked like endless acres of manicured lawns and shadow-draped gardens. The main house rose from the darkness, all marble columns and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected our headlights back at us like watching eyes. It was beautiful in the way a mausoleum is beautiful. Cold, perfect, dead. Lily had finally stopped crying somewhere during the 40-minute drive. Now she pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Is this a castle? Something like that, Nathan said quietly from the front seat. Marcus pulled up to the entrance where 3 men in dark suits waited, their expressions carved from stone. They didn't smile as we climbed out, didn't speak, just assessed us with the clinical detachment of people who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. One of them, younger Tsaes, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, stepped forward. All clear, boss. Perimeter's locked down. Nathan nodded, then turned to me. His hand hovered near my elbow but didn't quite touch, as if he'd already learned that lesson. Let's get you both inside. The interior was worse than the exterior. Marble floors stretched in every direction, reflecting the glow from chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. Everything gleamed, polished, pristine, untouched by anything as human as living. A museum, not a home. Guest wing is upstairs, Nathan said, his voice echoing in the cavernous entryway. Third door on the right. It connects to a smaller room for... He glanced at Lily. For her. I wanted to argue, to tell him we didn't need his guest wing or his protection or any of this. But Lily's hand was clammy in mine, and exhaustion pulled at her small shoulders. So I followed him up the sweeping staircase, through hallways lined with art I didn't recognize, until we reached a set of double doors. The room beyond was larger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk that probably cost more per yard than I made in a week. The connecting door led to a smaller room, still ridiculously oversized, with a twin bed and shelves already stocked with toys and books. How long have you been planning this? The question came out harder than I intended. Nathan stood in the doorway, careful not to enter. I wasn't. Marcus is efficient. In the hour since you learned you had a daughter, your bodyguard managed to stock a child's bedroom? I keep rooms ready. For emergencies. His jaw tightened. It's what I do. Lily tugged on my hand. Mommy, I'm tired. I pushed the anger down, buried it beneath the immediate need. I know, baby. Let's get you to bed. Nathan disappeared while I helped Lily into pajamas someone had left folded on the bed. The right size, the right style. Like he'd somehow known everything about her already. The thought made my skin crawl. When Lily was finally asleep, curled beneath blankets that probably had a higher thread count than most people's wedding dresses, I found Nathan waiting in the hallway. We need to talk, I said. He nodded toward a door at the end of the hall. My study. The study was different from the rest of the house. Smaller, darker. Books lined the walls, their spines cracked and worn. Actually red, not just decorative. A desk dominated the space. Its surface covered in papers and what looked like architectural blueprints. I closed the door behind me and let the anger I'd been swallowing finally rise. You left to protect me, but now you've dragged me into your world anyway. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if I wanted one. Yes. That's it? Just yes? What do you want me to say, Olivia? He turned, and the exhaustion in his face made him look older than his years. That I'm sorry? I am. That I wish things were different? I do. But wishes don't stop bullets, and apologies don't protect my daughter from men who'd use her to get to me. Our daughter. Our daughter, he echoed quietly. And at least this way I can keep you both alive. I wanted to throw the whiskey in his face, to scream that this wasn't living, it was hiding. But the memory of Lily's window shattering was too fresh. How long? I asked instead. Until it's safe. And when will that be? He took a long drink, his silence answering more honestly than words could. I left him standing there and walked back through the hallways, trying to memorize the layout like an escape route. The house felt like it went on forever, turns and doors and staircases leading to places I hadn't seen yet. It was in one of these explorations that I found the portrait. The hallway was darker than the others, lit only by sconces that cast more shadow than light. The painting hung at the far end. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, with Nathan's eyes, and a smile that suggested she knew secrets worth keeping. His sister. I spun to find Marcus standing behind me, silent as a ghost despite his size. In the dim light, the scars on his knuckles looked like old friends. I didn't know he had a sister. Elena. She died 6 years ago. Marcus's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Rival organization. They couldn't get to him, so they got to her instead. I looked back at the portrait, at the life frozen in oil paint. That's why he left. That's why he does everything. Marcus moved to stand beside me, his gaze on Elena's painted smile. Control the variables. Eliminate the threats. Never let anyone close enough to become a target. Except he did. With me. Except he did, Marcus agreed. And when Elena died, he realized the cost of that mistake. I wanted to feel anger at being called a mistake. Instead, I felt something closer to grief, for the woman in the portrait, for the man Nathan had been before loss carved him into something harder. When I finally made it back to my room, something white caught my eye beneath the door. A folded piece of paper, crisp and deliberate. I picked it up with shaking hands. He can't protect you from what's coming. The paper smelled faintly of gun oil and something else. Cologne. Expensive and unfamiliar. Not Nathan's. Someone else had been in this hallway. Someone who'd stood outside my door long enough to slide this beneath it. I checked the lock 3 times before climbing into bed fully clothed, my phone clutched in one hand even though I had no one to call. Outside my window, I could see guards patrolling the grounds, their flashlights cutting through the darkness in systematic patterns. A fortress, Nathan had said. A sanctuary. It felt more like a cage with invisible bars, one I'd walked into willingly, and one I wasn't sure I'd ever walk out of. The gates opened like jaws, swallowing us into a different world. Nathan's estate sprawled across what looked like endless acres of manicured lawns and shadow-draped gardens. The main house rose from the darkness, all marble columns and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected our headlights back at us like watching eyes. It was beautiful in the way a mausoleum is beautiful. Cold. Perfect. Dead. Lily had finally stopped crying somewhere during the 40-minute drive. Now she pressed her face against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Is this a castle? Something like that, Nathan said quietly from the front seat. Marcus pulled up to the entrance where 3 men in dark suits waited, their expressions carved from stone. They didn't smile as we climbed out, didn't speak. Just assessed us with the clinical detachment of people who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. One of them, younger, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, stepped forward. All clear, boss. Perimeter's locked down. Nathan nodded, then turned to me. His hand hovered near my elbow but didn't quite touch, as if he'd already learned that lesson. Let's get you both inside. The interior was worse than the exterior. Marble floors stretched in every direction, reflecting the glow from chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. Everything gleamed, polished, pristine, untouched by anything as human as living. A museum, not a home. Guest wing is upstairs, Nathan said, his voice echoing in the cavernous entryway. 3rd door on the right. It connects to a smaller room for... He glanced at Lily. For her. I wanted to argue, to tell him we didn't need his guest wing or his protection or any of this. But Lily's hand was clammy in mine, and exhaustion pulled at her small shoulders. So I followed him up the sweeping staircase, through hallways lined with art I didn't recognize, until we reached a set of double doors. The room beyond was larger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk that probably cost more per yard than I made in a week. The connecting door led to a smaller room, still ridiculously oversized, with a twin bed and shelves already stocked with toys and books. How long have you been planning this? The question came out harder than I intended. Nathan stood in the doorway, careful not to enter. I wasn't. Marcus is efficient. In the hour since you learned you had a daughter, your bodyguard managed to stock a child's bedroom? I keep rooms ready. For emergencies. His jaw tightened. It's what I do. Lily tugged on my hand. Mommy, I'm tired. I pushed the anger down, buried it beneath the immediate need. I know, baby. Let's get you to bed. Nathan disappeared while I helped Lily into pajamas someone had left folded on the bed, the right size, the right style, like he'd somehow known everything about her already. The thought made my skin crawl. When Lily was finally asleep, Curled beneath blankets that probably had a higher thread count than most people's wedding dresses, I found Nathan waiting in the hallway. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded toward a door at the end of the hall. "My study." The study was different from the rest of the house. Smaller, darker. Books lined the walls. Their spines cracked and worn. Actually red, not just decorative. A desk dominated the space, its surface covered in papers and what looked like architectural blueprints. I closed the door behind me and let the anger I'd been swallowing finally rise. "You left to protect me, but now you've dragged me into your world anyway." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if I wanted one. "Yes." "That's it? Just yes?" "What do you want me to say, Olivia?" He turned, and the exhaustion in his face made him look older than his years. "That I'm sorry?" "I am. That I wish things were different. I do. But wishes don't stop bullets, and apologies don't protect my daughter from men who'd use her to get to me." "Our daughter. Our daughter," he echoed quietly. "And at least this way, I can keep you both alive." I wanted to throw the whiskey in his face, to scream that this wasn't living. It was hiding. But the memory of Lily's window shattering was too fresh. "How long?" I asked instead. "Until it's safe." "And when will that be?" He took a long drink, his silence answering more honestly than words could. I left him standing there and walked back through the hallways, trying to memorize the layout like an escape route. The house felt like it went on forever. Turns and doors and staircases leading to places I hadn't seen yet. It was in one of these explorations that I found the portrait. The hallway was darker than the others, lit only by sconces that cast more shadow than light. The painting hung at the far end, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, with Nathan's eyes and a smile that suggested she knew secrets worth keeping. His sister. I spun to find Marcus standing behind me, silent as a ghost despite his size. In the dim light, the scars on his knuckles looked like old friends. I didn't know he had a sister. "Elena. She died 6 years ago." Marcus's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Rival organization. They couldn't get to him, so they got to her instead. I looked back at the portrait, at the life frozen in oil paint. That's why he left. That's why he does everything. Marcus moved to stand beside me, his gaze on Elena's painted smile. "Control the variables. Eliminate the threats. Never let anyone close enough to become a target." Except he did. With me. Except he did, Marcus agreed. And when Elena died, he realized the cost of that mistake. I wanted to feel anger at being called a mistake. Instead, I felt something closer to grief. For the woman in the portrait, for the man Nathan had been before loss carved him into something harder. When I finally made it back to my room, something white caught my eye beneath the door. A folded piece of paper, crisp and deliberate. I picked it up with shaking hands. He can't protect you from what's coming. The paper smelled faintly of gun oil and something else. Cologne. Expensive and unfamiliar. Not Nathan's. Someone else had been in this hallway. Someone who'd stood outside my door long enough to slide this beneath it. I checked the lock 3 times before climbing into bed fully clothed. My phone clutched in one hand, even though I had no one to call. Outside my window, I could see guards patrolling the grounds, their flashlights cutting through the darkness in systematic patterns. A fortress, Nathan had said. A sanctuary. It felt more like a cage with invisible bars, one I'd walked into willingly, and one I wasn't sure I'd ever walk out of. She arrived like winter itself, sharp, inevitable, beautiful in a way that warned you not to touch. Claire Donovan wore her power in tailored lines and perfect posture. Her heels clicked against marble with the confidence of someone who'd walked these halls before, who knew exactly where everything was and who it belonged to. When she extended her hand to me over breakfast, her smile never reached her eyes. Olivia. Finally. Her grip was firm, businesslike. Nathan's told me so much about you. Funny, I said, releasing her hand. He's told me nothing about you. That sounds like him. She settled into the chair across from me, accepting coffee from a house staff member I hadn't even heard enter. Everything about her was smooth, practiced, controlled. I'm his legal advisor, among other things. The pause before those last 3 words was deliberate. A warning wrapped in silk. Lily was upstairs with Marcus. He'd offered to show her the garden maze, and for once I'd been grateful for the reprieve. This conversation felt like it needed to happen without small ears listening. Nathan mentioned you had a background in corporate law, I said, though he'd mentioned no such thing. Among other things, Claire repeated, and this time her smile had teeth. We go back a long way, Nathan and I, before Elena died, before he became... this. She gestured vaguely at the fortress around us. Back when he still believed in happy endings. I sipped my coffee, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. He doesn't do love, Claire continued, her voice soft but cutting through the morning light like a blade. He does loyalty. Don't confuse the two. Nathan Cross protects what's his assets, his people, his reputation. But protection isn't the same as affection. Cross? The name caught me off guard. She tilted her head, studying me. He didn't tell you his real name? I knew him as Cole. Everyone knew him as Cole. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Nathan Cole was the mask. Nathan Cross is what's underneath. She leaned forward slightly. You don't fake your name unless you're hiding from more than enemies, Olivia. You fake it when you're hiding from yourself. That's enough. Nathan's voice cut across the breakfast room like a whip crack. He stood in the doorway, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. His eyes, those gray eyes that I'd once thought could see right through me, fixed on Claire with something close to fury. We were just getting to know each other, Claire said smoothly, not even flinching. You were just leaving. Nathan moved into the room, his presence filling it. Whatever you came to say it to me, not to her. Claire stood, gathering her briefcase with unhurried grace. I came to remind you that sentiment makes you sloppy, and sloppy gets people killed. She paused at the door, her gaze sliding to me one last time. Ask Marcus about the Montreal job. Ask him what happens when Nathan lets his heart make decisions. Then she was gone, heels clicking away into the depths of the house. Nathan exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. Don't listen to her. Was she wrong? I asked. About your name? About any of it? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the answer in his silence. I found Marcus in the security room, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of the estate. He didn't look surprised when I walked in. Claire says your boss's real name is Cross, not Cole. Marcus's fingers paused over a keyboard. Nathan Cross. Always has been. You don't fake your name unless you're hiding from more than enemies, I said, echoing Claire's words. No, Marcus agreed grimly. You don't. What's he hiding from? The person he used to be. Before Elena. Before he learned that caring about people gets them killed. Marcus pulled up a file on one of the screens. Old photos, newspaper clippings in French. Montreal, 6 years ago. He went soft on an extraction, tried to negotiate instead of execute. 3 of our people died because he hesitated. Elena died a week later because they knew he'd hesitate. I stared at the screen, at the evidence of Nathan's past mistakes written in other people's blood. He won't make that mistake again, Marcus said quietly. Whatever Claire thinks, whatever you think, he won't lose Lily the way he lost his sister. That night, I found them in the library. Nathan's voice drifted through the half-open door, soft and careful, reading words I'd memorized long ago. The same storybook. The same rhythms I'd used to lull Lily to sleep in our tiny apartment while he was God knows where, being Nathan Cross instead of Nathan Cole. Through the crack, I could see Lily curled against his side, her small hand resting on his arm. His voice had lost its edge, his shoulders their tension. For just a moment, he looked like the man I'd loved, before I knew what he was, before I knew what loving him would cost. And the dragon learned, Nathan read, that the treasure he'd been guarding wasn't gold at all. The alarm shattered the moment like glass. Red lights flooded the hallways. Nathan was on his feet instantly. Lily scooped into his arms before I could even move. The softness vanished, replaced by the commander, the killer, the man who'd faked his name and built a fortress and left everyone he loved to keep them safe in. "Get her to the panic room," he barked at Marcus, who materialized from nowhere. "Now!" But Lily was clinging to Nathan's neck, her face buried in his shoulder. When she looked up, tears streaked her cheeks. "Are you going to die?" she whispered. "Like in my dreams?" Nathan's expression cracked, just for a heartbeat. Then he smoothed it over, pressing a kiss to her forehead with a gentleness that broke something inside me. "Not tonight, sweetheart." The lie was so tender, so perfectly delivered, that I almost believed it myself. Marcus's face went stone still as the recording played, Eric's voice crackling through my phone speaker like a confession at a funeral. "Shipment routes, security rotations, everything you asked for. But Dominic, I'm telling you, Nathan's getting paranoid. He knows someone's feeding you intel." "Does he suspect you?" "No. He trusts me. That's the problem." Marcus reached over and stopped the playback, his jaw working like he was chewing glass. The security room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in with the weight of what we'd just heard. "How long have you had this?" His voice was quiet, controlled. The kind of control that preceded violence. 2 hours. I found it on a burner phone, hidden in the East Wing. I'd been looking for towels, of all things. Found betrayal instead, tucked behind Egyptian cotton. I thought maybe it was a setup, maybe someone trying to frame him, but it's his voice. Marcus's knuckles were white against the edge of the desk. "I've known Eric for 8 years. Saved his life in Prague. He saved mine in Caracas." He looked at me, and something ancient and tired lived in his eyes. 8 years, and he's been selling us out for what? Money? Immunity? "Does it matter?" "No," Marcus said after a long moment. "I suppose it doesn't." Nathan returned 3 hours later, bloodied and furious in a way I hadn't seen before. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, dark stains spreading across the fabric that might have been his blood or someone else's. He moved through the house like a storm contained in human form, guards scattering from his path. I caught him in the hallway outside his study, my phone already unlocked, the recording cued. "I need you to listen to something." He stopped, breathing hard, his gray eyes glacial. "Not now, Olivia." "It's Eric. He's the leak." The words landed like bullets. Nathan went completely still. The kind of stillness that predators achieve right before they strike. Then, without a word, he took the phone from my hand and listened. I watched his face as Eric's voice filled the space between us. Watched the micro-expressions that flickered and died. Disbelief, recognition, grief, and finally, nothing. By the time Dominic's voice joined the recording, Nathan's expression had gone blank as fresh snow. When it ended, he handed the phone back with mechanical precision. "Where is he?" "Guest quarters. Marcus has him contained." Nathan nodded once, then walked past me toward his study. Send him to me. Nathan, send him to me. I'd never heard 4 words carry so much weight. I didn't mean to listen. Didn't mean to stand in the hallway like a coward while 2 men who'd bled together tore each other apart with words sharper than any blade. You don't understand what you've done. Eric's voice, desperate, pleading. Dominic has something on me. He has my sister, Nathan. My fucking sister. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to come to me. Nathan's voice was eerily calm, which somehow made it worse. You were supposed to trust that I would help you. Like you helped Elena? The silence that followed was suffocating. That's not fair, Nathan said finally, and the rawness in his voice made my chest ache. Isn't it? Glass shattered. Thrown or knocked, I couldn't tell. You can't save everyone, Nathan. You can barely save yourself. All this, the fortress, the guns, the paranoia, you think it makes you invincible? You're just a man pretending to be something more. And you're a man who sold out his family for his own. My sister is already dead. Nathan's shout echoed through the walls. Dominic doesn't keep loose ends, Eric. You know that. You've always known that. She died the moment you made your first call. The sound that came next might have been a sob or a scream. Then footsteps, heavy and fast. A scuffle. Something. Someone hitting a wall hard enough to rattle the art hanging in the hallway. I'm sorry. Eric's voice broken now. Nathan, I'm so fucking sorry. The gunshot was almost gentle by comparison. A single crack that seemed to suck all the air from the house. I pressed my hand against my mouth, fighting the urge to run or scream or break down that door. Instead, I stood frozen while my daughter slept 2 floors above, while Nathan Cross executed his friend, while the fortress we were hiding in proved itself to be built on bodies. The study door opened minutes later. Nathan emerged pale, expressionless, with blood on his hands that he hadn't bothered to wipe away. He looked through me rather than at me, like I was just another piece of furniture in his mausoleum. It's done, he said flatly. Nathan, Marcus will handle the cleanup. You should check on Lily. I stepped in front of him, forcing him to see me. You can't just kill everyone who betrays you. He finally focused on my face, and what I saw there terrified me more than any threat Dominic could make. Emptiness. Complete and total emptiness, like someone had scooped out everything human and left only the shell. That's exactly what keeps you alive, he said. Then he walked past me, leaving bloody footprints on marble floors that some nameless staff member would scrub away before morning, erasing evidence like it had never happened. Like Eric had never happened. I found him hours later, standing outside Lily's room in the darkness. He hadn't changed clothes, hadn't washed the blood away, just stood there with his hand pressed against her door, listening to her breathe through the wood. I almost left, almost gave him this moment of private grief. But something in his posture, the way his shoulders curved inward, like he was trying to make himself smaller, kept me frozen in place. I never wanted her to see this side of me, he whispered to no one, or maybe to the ghost of who he used to be. When I left 5 years ago, I thought if I stayed away, she'd never have to know what her father really is. His voice cracked on the last word, and I watched Nathan Cross, killer, protector, broken man, break a little more in the shadows of his fortress. I didn't go to him, didn't offer comfort or condemnation. Some fractures run too deep to bridge with words. The research had consumed me for 3 days. While Nathan spiraled into whatever dark place men like him go after killing their friends, I buried myself in numbers. Bank statements I shouldn't have had access to, shell company registrations, property deeds for warehouses that existed only on paper. The clinic had taught me to see patterns in chaos, Symptoms that didn't quite add up. Prescription histories that told stories patients wouldn't. Tracking money wasn't so different from tracking disease. Both left trails if you knew where to look. I spread the documents across the dining table in the east wing, far from Nathan's study and the bloodstains I knew were still being scrubbed from the hardwood. Marcus found me there at 2 a.m, surrounded by coffee cups and highlighted printouts that mapped Dominic's empire in fluorescent yellow and pink. "You should be sleeping," he said, but his eyes were already scanning my work. "So should you." I pushed a stack of papers toward him. Dominic moves money through legitimate businesses, medical supply companies, real estate holdings, a chain of urgent care clinics across 3 states. He's not just a gangster, Marcus. He's a businessman using crime as a side venture. Marcus picked up one of the documents, his scarred fingers tracing the corporate structure I'd mapped out. "How did you get these?" "The clinic where I worked shares a medical supply vendor with one of Dominic's fronts. I remembered the name from invoices I used to process." I pulled out another sheet. That led me to the parent company, which led me to the real estate holdings, which led me to a paper trail that could bury him. Marcus looked at me with something like respect. "Without firing a single shot." "Exactly." I stood, stretching muscles that had been hunched over paperwork for hours. "We expose his money laundering to the IRS, his healthcare fraud to the state medical board, his shell companies to the SEC. Let the law do what Nathan's been trying to do with bullets." "Nathan won't like this." "Nathan doesn't have to like it. He just has to let me try." Marcus studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Show me what you've got." We worked until dawn, Marcus filling in gaps with intelligence I couldn't have accessed, transaction dates, witness names, physical evidence their organization had collected but never thought to weaponize legally. By the time sunlight crept through the windows, we had something that looked less like revenge and more like justice. Nathan found us there 3 hours later. He stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes moved across the table, the documents, the laptops, the evidence of my investigation, and something dangerous flickered in their gray depths. "You went behind my back." I met his gaze without flinching. "I went around your war. This isn't your fight, Olivia. It became my fight when someone shot through my daughter's window." I stood, placing myself between him and the table like I could physically protect my work. "You fight with guns. I fight with facts. And facts don't leave bodies that need burying in the middle of the night." The muscle in his jaw tightened. "You don't understand how this world works. I understand that your way is killing you." The words came out harder than I intended, but I didn't take them back. "I watched you execute your friend 3 days ago, Nathan. I watched you stand outside our daughter's room afterward, whispering apologies to someone who was asleep and couldn't absolve you. How many more people do you have to kill before you realize you're destroying yourself?" Marcus cleared his throat. "She's got a solid case here, boss. Federal charges. State charges. Enough to lock Dominic up for decades without us lifting a finger." Nathan moved into the room slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. He picked up one of the documents, a financial statement I'd annotated with damning notes, and studied it with the same intensity he probably used to study kill orders. "You've changed," he said finally, so quietly I almost missed it. I had to. I crossed my arms, holding my ground. "You're not the only one trying to survive. I'm just doing it without becoming something I can't recognize in the mirror." The silence stretched between us, heavy with accusations neither of us wanted to voice. Outside, I could hear Lily laughing at something. Marcus must have arranged for one of the house staff to keep her occupied. The sound of her joy felt obscene against the weight of what we were discussing. Nathan set the document down carefully, his fingers lingering on the paper. "If we do this your way, it takes time. Investigations, trials, appeals. Dominic has lawyers who could drag this out for years." Better than having him dead and his organization scattered to whoever's next in line, I countered. You kill him, someone else takes his place. You destroy his empire from the inside. Legally, publicly, you make an example that lasts. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for the justice system to work its magic? His voice carried an edge I recognized. Do we just hope Dominic doesn't kill us first? We protect ourselves, but we protect ourselves smart. I gestured to Marcus. You have resources. Use them for defense instead of offense. Let Dominic know we have this information. That it's been distributed to multiple sources with instructions to release it if anything happens to us. Make him more afraid of the legal consequences than he is of you. Nathan laughed. A short, bitter sound. You want me to negotiate with him. I want you to outthink him instead of outgun him. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. Admiration flickered beneath the frustration, mixing with exhaustion and maybe, just maybe, a hint of the man I'd loved before I knew what he was capable of. You really believe this will work? He asked. I believe it's worth trying before we add more ghosts to the ones already haunting you. Marcus stepped forward, placing a hand on Nathan's shoulder. She's right, Nathan. We've been fighting this war on his terms. Time to change the battlefield. Nathan closed his eyes, and I saw the weight of every decision he'd ever made pressing down on him. When he opened them again, something had shifted. Not surrender, but calculation. The businessman beneath the killer, running cost-benefit analysis on my proposal. All right, he said finally. We do it your way. But the moment Dominic makes a move, then we protect ourselves, I interrupted. Together, as partners. Uneasy allies, he corrected, but there was something almost like warmth in his voice. Lovers on opposite sides of morality, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. Drawn together by the same goal. Nathan's hand reached out, hovering near mine on the table without quite touching. The same careful distance he'd maintained since I'd arrived at his fortress. To end the threat once and for all. Once and for all, I echoed. Outside, Lily's laughter rang out again, bright and innocent, a reminder of what we were fighting for, and what we stood to lose if we failed. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. The first explosion ripped through the dawn like thunder breaking bone. The mansion's alarms screamed to life as gunfire erupted outside. Shards of glass rained from the upper windows, catching the last of the night's darkness in a spray of silver. Nathan Cross was already moving. Fast, silent, controlled fury. He shoved open the bedroom door where Olivia slept, scooping Lily into his arms before she could even sit up. Nathan, what? Get up, now. His tone left no space for hesitation. Another blast followed, closer this time. The chandeliers in the hall trembled. Olivia's pulse hammered in her throat as she stumbled into her slippers, grabbing the blanket from Lily's bed and wrapping it around her trembling daughter. Who is it? She managed to ask, voice shaking. Dominic. Nathan's jaw tightened. He found us. The corridor outside filled with shouts, his men taking defensive positions, answering with bursts of gunfire that turned the mansion's echoing halls into chaos. Marcus Reed appeared from the stairwell, blood already soaking through the sleeve of his shirt. They breached the outer wall, he gasped. We've lost cameras on the east side. Get Olivia and Lily to the panic room, Nathan ordered. I'm not leaving you, Olivia said, gripping his arm. Nathan's eyes met hers, fierce even in the half-light. You are. I promised you'd be safe. Then another explosion tore through the west wing, and the entire house shuddered. Lily cried out, clinging tighter to her mother. Marcus ushered them down the corridor, limping but unyielding. Nathan covered their flank, firing 2 quick rounds down the hall as masked men surged through the smoke. By the time they reached the steel door to the panic room, Marcus was bleeding heavily. Olivia tried to help him, pressing her hand against his shoulder. "You're hit! Don't waste time," he growled. "Get her inside." Nathan turned, scanning the hall. His men were falling back, outnumbered and pinned down. He keyed in the code and shoved Olivia and Lily through the reinforced doorway. "Stay here. Don't open this for anyone but me." He started to pull the door shut, but Lily's small hand caught his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, the word trembling in the air between them. "Don't go." Nathan froze for a fraction of a second, the battle fading to a hum in his ears. Then he bent down, kissed her forehead once, and said softly, "I'll be back." The door slammed shut. Outside, the hallway was hell. Gunfire, smoke, the acrid sting of burning plaster. Nathan moved like a shadow through it all. 2 shots, 1 strike, 1 fall. But for every man he dropped, another took his place. Dominic's forces were trained, brutal, relentless. He reached the grand hall just as the front doors burst open. Dominic Hayes stepped inside, flanked by his remaining men, a gun in one hand and a child in the other. Lily. Time fractured. The guards Nathan had left behind lay motionless on the floor. Dominic's smile was cold, confident, almost pitying. "Trade your crown for your kid, Cross," he said. "That's the deal." Nathan's heart thundered, but his voice stayed calm. "Let her go. She has nothing to do with this." "She's everything to do with this," Dominic sneered. "You built your empire on fear. Now let's see how fearless you are when it's your own blood at stake." Nathan dropped his gun. It hit the marble with a hollow clang. "Take me instead." Olivia, hearing the muffled shouts through the panic room feed, scrambled for the manual override. Marcus, weak but conscious, grabbed her wrist. "Don't. He'll kill all of you." "I can't just sit here," she snapped, tears streaking down her cheeks. Outside, Dominic cocked his weapon, pressing it lightly against Lily's temple. "I think I'll make her watch. Maybe then you'll understand what losing everything really means." Nathan took 1 slow step forward, unarmed, palms raised. "Please," he said quietly. "She's just a little girl." The panic room door burst open. Olivia stood there, trembling, Marcus's pistol clutched in both hands. Smoke stung her eyes. The marble floor was slick with blood. She saw Lily's face, pale, terrified, and something inside her broke. Dominic turned at the sound, surprise flickering just long enough. The gun went off. The recoil slammed through Olivia's arms. Dominic staggered back, a look of disbelief frozen on his face before he fell. His gun clattered across the floor. The echo of the shot seemed to last forever. Lily screamed. Olivia dropped the pistol, rushing to her daughter. Nathan caught them both, pulling them close as the world finally went silent. "It's over," he whispered, his voice shaking for the first time in years. But Olivia's hands wouldn't stop trembling. Her eyes stayed fixed on the gun lying a few feet away, on the man bleeding out beside it. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. For the first time, she understood Nathan's world, not from the outside looking in, but from the inside out. And it terrified her. Morning came slowly. The house smelled of smoke and gunpowder, the air heavy with grief and relief intertwined. Marcus survived, patched up in the study by a medic. Nathan handled the cleanup quietly, giving orders in clipped tones, his every motion a study in control. But when he finally returned to Olivia and Lily, he didn't look like a man who'd won anything. He looked like a man who'd lost too much. Olivia sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. Lily slept with her head in her mother's lap, the aftermath finally catching up. Nathan crouched down beside them. She's safe now. Olivia looked up, eyes rimmed red. Safe, she repeated. Until the next war. Until the next enemy. He didn't argue. Didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He only said, I'm done. That night, he began dismantling everything. His network, his holdings, his entire empire built on fear. Bit by bit, he turned the money into something real. Hospitals, housing projects, clean investments. The papers called it redemption. Olivia called it survival. Weeks later, the city's violence faded into rumor. The sea replaced the sound of gunfire. They moved to a quiet coastal town, where Lily could laugh without flinching, and the wind carried nothing but salt and peace. Olivia reopened a small veterinary clinic by the pier. Nathan spent his days rebuilding, learning to live without bodyguards or bloodshed. One evening, as the sun bled gold over the horizon, Olivia stood on the porch with him, watching Lily chase seagulls along the shore. She still thinks you're just my friend, Olivia said. Nathan smiled faintly. Then I'll spend the rest of my life earning more than that. She turned toward him, eyes soft. For her sake. No more secrets. For hers, he said quietly. They watched Lily's laughter dance across the waves. The world that had once been filled with danger now felt small and fragile, like something worth protecting. Not with guns, but with gentleness. For the first time in years, Nathan Cross wasn't running the city. He was just holding his family's hands. If you felt something while watching, please subscribe. That's how I know these stories mean something to you. Even on your TV, take a second to join our community of story lovers. Your support keeps this world of emotions alive.